Yes. All right. MD, thank you so very much for that amazing session. That's very profound one. I always love it to get trained under you, and this is one of those privilege that I um enjoy so far. Thank you so much for that amazing session. So, let me quickly mention that this session is being recorded for educational purposes, and I need to confirm if I'm audible enough.
Yeah, you can hear. I can hear you.
Very well, sir. I can
Oh,
hear
I
you.
can
awesome,
hear you well too.
awesome, awesome. Okay, so straight we'll be going into the second session of which is also the final, and um, this would not take so much time. I'm hearing a
Right. Sorry, it's from me. Let me move.
oh, okay, sir. Yes. So, like we all know, this session is about um, the SOPs, operating procedures on feeding. So, I expect all of us to open our manual now. Um, and I want all of us to work together. It will look as if we are continuing on the session we had last week on feeding management. So, but it is basically about standard operating procedures, and you will see as we walk through it. So, what it's about is that we are talking about a step-by-step procedures that we want to follow whenever we want to feed our fish. And thankful to Oasis Aquarich Fisheries, we have standardized these procedures. And one of the things it will do is that it will ensure that we don't overfeed. It will ensure that we don't underfeed. So they are the steps anytime we want to feed. Those are the steps we want to follow closely. Um, it is worthy of note to mention that yes, we are not robots, but we want to follow these um, guidelines. Those are the things that guide our feeding procedures. Be that as it may, that I mentioned that we are not robots, then if there are some other things around it that at any point in time you feel that it is not to be done at that time. So what it means is that you follow what is in the SOP and then you communicate your concerns to the proper um, quarters. So I want to mention again that what this will do is that it will ensure that we feed optimally. And that's not a big grammar. Feeding optimally means that we don't overfeed, and we don't underfeed. Um, so I want us to go straight to the required materials because I already assume we have all opened our um, manual. So I want an intern, specifically someone who have not heard their voice today, to um, read the required materials and equipment that we will be considering. That's in number 10 in the manual. Number 10. Feel free to unmute and read.
Wheelbarrow,
Yes.
weighing scale,
Mm.
scoping bowl, feeding bowl, record sheet, feeding bag, Both glove and
Apron.
apron.
Okay, okay, thank you. So it's actually very important that we are on the same page, and that's why I'm doing this to ensure that we are all engaged and that nobody. So going forward, please, as we go through the manual together, every one of us, most especially the interns, let's work with it together. Um, so we want to. You see, the reason I mentioned you to read all of these things is because those things there are important for you to know that these are the tools we will be using and we will get used to those tools. And if you see, there are some things around uh, the the boots, the gloves. These things are not just there for decorations. They are there because at Oasis Aquarich Fisheries, we prioritize our health first. So every individual should ensure that their personal protective equipment are used because it is your responsibility to ensure that you are fine. You take care of yourself while carrying out the responsibilities on the farm. So, but quickly within the next few minutes, we'll be going through the procedures and the steps for feeding on the farm that we align with in Oasis Aquarich Fisheries. So one of the things that I want you to know before we begin talking about these steps is that for the first few days, you may need to walk around, maybe using a document or having these guidelines on your phone handy. But after a few days, you may not need to check all of these things because they become part and parcel of what you do. They are not difficult things. So I don't want you to think that every time you want to go to feed with a um, sheet of paper or with some sheets of paper. They are basic things that we have already discussed. We just put them together as guidelines and step by step based on experience and based on the peculiarities of our farm. So the first thing we are talking about is that in production steps, procedure steps, that's number 12. So just in case there is someone missing it out there. The first thing is that we want to ensure that the quantity of feed to be fed is available a day before the next feeding day. So I want to feed today at 9 a.m. It means that the feed I want to feed today, before leaving the farm yesterday, I must have arranged it somewhere and I must have weighed it. You see, so we want to ensure that that quantity of feed is available. What this does is that there will not be a time that we will now realize that is when you want to feed, you now realize that you don't have feed. So if you follow this first procedure, there will not be a time where you want to feed and you now realize that there's no feed. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is that we weigh the quantity of feed that we fed the previous day plus 10% of the feed that we weighed yesterday. So for instance, we fed 100 kg yesterday. So what's the quantity of feed I'm supposed to take to the pond today? It's 110 kg. So is that straightforward? The reason is because it doesn't mean that you have to feed everything, but that is what you want to take to the pond. Although there is an exception, and the exception to that is that the feed that was fed yesterday was not up to the usual quantity the fish will take. So in case of that, maybe based on certain thing, maybe you were medicated, maybe the fish are sick or some other things, but you know that okay, the reason they did not take up to this is has been established. So, but basically, on a normal circumstances, you don't want to take less than what you take yesterday to the pond. Um, so the next one now is that we take feed to the stock feeding point safely by using a carrier like wheelbarrow. I've seen many people over and over want to carry feed to the farm and they carry it on the head. I mean, from the maybe feed store to the pond, they carry it on the head, on the hand, which is okay and it's fine. And we work with what is convenient. But when there is a wheelbarrow, I believe that's more convenient than carrying it on the head. So, based on our SOP, because it's easier, it does not give you stress, it does not uh, waste your time, it is faster. In fact, it even saves the feed. You don't have um, situations when the feed will be pouring on the ground and all of that. So we want to make sure that the feed is being carried using the wheelbarrow. The next one is about observation. Hmm. So we have mentioned many of all of these things, but you see, we have now arranged them in succession. You want to observe your fish for any unusual behavior. You want to see that are there signs of infection? Are there erratic swimming? Are they flashing? Are they darting? Is it that all of the fish are doing so well around, but there is a particular one, two, or three fish that are isolating themselves toward the side of the pond? Are they using their skin, their flesh, to rub the wall of the pond? Is there mortality in the pond? So these are the things we want to check. Are there bruises on the body? Are there lesions? Is there anything like blood somewhere around? So you want to first observe these things before you feed. Anybody that feeds a fish without observing this fish, I can say that person is a quack. And not any one of us around, because look, all of us here, we are experts, we are professionals. Not anyone around us here should do something like that. If we do it, that person should be jailed. So, I mean, because you know what you are doing, you know more than that. Okay, so no feeding should take place when observation is not done. So next, confirm that there is no reason not to feed before you start feeding process. So you will notice that this comes immediately after observation. So you can observe. It's not compulsory that you feed, and your fish will not die if you don't feed. So you want to ensure that um before I feed, is it that everything is clear to go before I feed? Now, the um it's possible that you now notice that there is sluggishness on the farm. I mean, in of the fish in the ponds. You want to first brainstorm what is wrong here. You first want to consider what the issue is. So it's not that okay, I've noticed that the fish are swimming erratically, I record it and I fed. No. You want to confirm that. Is there a reason not to feed? Because there are a lot of reasons not to feed, some of which we know about already that we have discussed, and some of which in practice as we go on, you will begin to see some of these things too. Um, at this point, I want to confirm if I'm still audible enough because I'm seeing my connection is kind of low. I'm far from my internet. I want to confirm, please confirm if you can hear me audibly. Hello?
We can hear you. We have given you some signs.
Oh, okay, okay. Amazing. So thank you very much for that, for speaking out with the microphone. Thank you so much. So moving to the next point is that we want to feed at the same point. We want to feed at the same point, and the distance we are talking about is about 1 to 3 meters in diameter. So for those who are not conversant with meter, 1 meter is about 3.2 feet. So it means that a distance of about 3.2 feet, so between 3 to 9 feet, yeah, depending on the pond size, the area, the dimension. We want to make sure that, hey, we are not just scattering feed around. So there are different methods of feeding, broadcasting all around, but based on our standard operating procedure, what we work with is feeding around 1 to 3 meters in diameter. Of course, it depends on the stock size, it depends on the age of the fish. All right. So we emphasize on this every day when we mentioned inconsistent um, feeding schedule, and then we talked about routines. And what this is about is that we feed at the same time every day because it helps them with appetite stimulation. You don't want to underemphasize this. And honestly, this is one of the pro tips in fish farming. So this is one of the hacks that make people expert and pro in fish. Feed at the same time every day because it stimulates their appetite. Next is that you introduce the feed to the stock gradually. Okay, I've gone to the pond with 110 kg of feed. I don't just pour the feed and go that at least this is what. No, 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 no. That's not how to feed. So, and we want to introduce the feed to the stock gradually. Introduce the feed to the stock gradually and increase the feeding with increase to their response. So we are increasing the feed according to the response. So we feed according to response. We don't just feed based on, we don't ration feed for them. Yes, we have a particular quantity of feed that we are taking to that fish pond, but we don't feed a particular quantity. We are always feeding them with according to their response. So you keep feeding and you may begin to reduce the feeding as their appetite, their feeding frenzy decreases. Okay. So the next is that as long as they are picking the feed from you, you keep feeding them. You don't stop. So you don't say that the one you have taken is that one too is enough. You wait till tomorrow. No, you keep feeding them because the time that your fish are taking feed from you is an advantage, is a good window um you want to maximize. You want to maximize. For instance, you will notice that periods when you change your water and your water is very clean, your fish will take more feed from you than you do ordinarily when you just change their water because the water is fresh, the environment is clean, so they will take more fish. They can even take more feed than they took, yesterday or some days before. So once you see that they are taking feed well, you feed them well. So, and these are some of the things you will also see in that your book. I believe that in um the book, the feeding errors book, your copies will get to you early next week, and then you will see if you are able to take time to go through all of this, which I recommend that you do because the organization really paid for that book. I mentioned that books are not things that should be given for free. So, but magnanimously, the organization has bought the copies for you, which is a very big investment, and it's an asset that you should um, take advantage of. So, what am I saying and emphasizing here? Keep feeding as long as your feet are picking feed from you, and you should not stop if they are still picking it. And once you see that they are, about to stop, you you feed them according to response. So the next that is that it is possible to have quite a lot of feed floating on top of the water while they are still picking the feed. You see now. So you will need to stop and allow them pick the substantial amount on the water before you start again. You see, so this is just clear and straightforward. Even as you are feeding according to their response, you will get to notice at some point that this feed on the water is now too much. So you will need to wait a little for them to pick those ones. And then when they pick it, you add um for them, and then you keep feeding according to their response. Okay. So next, if the feeding, if the floating feed are not completely consumed within 5 to 10 minutes, you have overfed. But if they are consumed quickly, you might need to give more. And if they consume slowly but picked everything, you are fed optimally. This is just a key identification to know if you have overfed, if you have underfed, and if you are fed optimally. So your goal for every feeding is to feed optimally. It means that you don't want to feed lower than they need, and you don't want to feed more than they required. And this is one of the things we dealt with last week. We mentioned that if after 5 minutes you still see crumbs of feed on your pond water, it's just a clear sign that you have overfed. It means you have overfed. So, but now looking at this manual, you now say if they consumed everything quickly, all of the feed you put, they finished it once, and you don't feed them again, that is clear underfeeding. So anytime you are confused whether have I overfed, have I underfed, this is one place you can actually come to see. They consumed everything quickly and they are still very active, and you can't, at that point you can't say you have finished feeding. All right, so you want to know if you are fed optimally. The sign is that they consumed everything, and the few crumbs on the water, they are now picking it slowly. That's the best time to stop. That is optimal feeding. So next, make sure that no pellets drop on the pond dike, and ensure that the vegetation around the dike is not trapping the pellets. The idea around this is to ensure that there is no feed wastage. Because if the care is not being taken, we'll be calculating the FCR, we'll be calculating the feed taken by the feed. But you will not know that it is the feed taken by the pond area, feed taken due to wastage. You see, that's a whole big issue on its own. So we want to ensure that no feed is dropping in the pond area, on the pond dike, or maybe around the vegetation, or through maybe when we are moving feed um from the feed store to the pond. So you want to ensure that feed is not wasted at any point in time. Now, to build experience and confidence in fish feeding technique, you will adopt a 5 minute rule of feeding. And what is this about? After you thought you had fed correctly, leave the pond area and come back after 5 minutes. You see, this thing I'm saying now, we have said it last week. We emphasized it. I've said it today, and we are saying it again. It's not a coincidence that we are saying it again. It's because of how important it is. So, after feeding and you have left, go back to that pond after 5 minutes. If you see some feed pellets that the fish have not picked, it means you have overfed. Now, if you get there and there is no crumb at all on the farm, and then you now give them, you try to give them feed again. If they can take 5% of what they took initially, it means you have underfed. It means that what you feed them before is not enough. You see, anytime you go to the fish pond with feed, the fish will be collecting feed. They don't get satisfied, you know, just like that. Not like they don't get satisfied. But even when they are satisfied and you go and come back, they will take feed from you. So, but there is a quantity they now take, and there is a kind of feeding frenzy that you see, that you know that this fish has been fed this morning. No, it was not well fed. So this is the sign that will let you know, because of the quantity they took. So, but if they are unable to finish that 5% that you feed them, it means that you are fed optimally. So that's effective feeding. Okay. So finally, what are the things you need to do after feeding time? You take the remaining feed, you weigh, you calculate the quantity that you have fed, which is not a big deal. You are just subtracting the quantity you take to the pond, you subtract it from the quantity that is left. Okay. And then you record your observation and record the feed that is taken. You will notice that when Rebecca was reading the required materials and equipment, one of the things she mentioned is record sheets. And this is one of the most important things. Record sheets. So this is because we already have pre-populated forms. You don't have to stress yourself, just fill the forms. They are straightforward things. Once you fill them, you don't have to rack your brain around. I fed this, I observed this. So there are areas in the form where you will just feel, and then easily you can communicate all of the things you have done, and you will record your observation before you feed. You will record the observation while feeding and observations after you feed, which include the quantity of fish you have fed. So there are things we check for quality assurance that we check periodically to ensure that this our standard operating procedure is being followed. Okay, and that is one of our key performance indicators for the SOP. So other key, uh, key performance indicators are the feed conversion ratio. So it will be used to check the effective use of this SOP to know that this standard operating procedure is well being followed. Okay, so but what I want to lay emphasis on is documentation and records. So 14, I'm on 14. The complete the feed and feeding chart immediately after feeding time. So one of the mistakes many people make about recording and documenting is that after they carry out feeding activities, they feel like I will do it later. I will record it. They can feed in the morning and say that I will record when I want to record the one in the evening. I will record the feeding observation in the morning. So that's not done. That's not done. It's never sustainable. It doesn't work really. So sometimes the best thing to do is to record immediately after you feed. Record. Put your records down. Put your documentation down. So then, when recording, don't mince words. So if there is a very good scenario, record it how good that scenario is. The same way you observe it, so that you will take actions where it is necessary, so that the other people will take responsibility and take actions where necessary. If what you recorded was 50 mortalities, for instance, don't say there's about 20 mortalities. No. So if the water quality is good, just record it as good or as bad as you observe it and take the actions where necessary, representation where necessary. And documentation is not complete when report is not made available. In case you don't understand what I just said, what it means is that if it was not documented, it didn't happen. It's you that know that it happened. But if it was not documented, it didn't happen. It did not happen. Okay, so the emphasis here is that make your report available appropriately for proper documentation. So this is the end of this session, and I would now want to call for questions, contributions. Um, you feel there is something you want to deduct from, add to, please feel free to raise up your hand so we address that quickly. Thank you. Sorry to if I'm interrupting. Sorry, sir.
No, 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 no,
So,
no.
okay, yes. So, anytime you feel you have a question, please feel free to initiate a question on the group chat. If you feel it's something you don't want to do on the group chat, I know you can ask any one of us um, in the just in the personal WhatsApp. And if you feel it's something you feel others can learn from too, please do well to ask on the group so that we can share knowledge and everyone can interact around it. So even if you don't have question now, we are still expecting questions around this and not only about this training, especially when things get practical. Feel free to ask questions. That's one thing I commend some people for, especially someone like IBK. She's um, open-minded and very anything she's not clarified with, she opens up to get question to get clarifications about it. And honestly, she's learning so wonderfully fast. So this is why I want to encourage um, the interns too, please. It's something you must imbibe during all of these activities you are, carrying out. That you'll be carrying out. Please seek to ask questions when necessary and when you are not sure about anything. So that will be all for now. Thank you so much, MD.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we can call it a day. Um,
Okay, so I've not heard from Rebecca. So Rebecca, let's hear from you.